Hello, everyone. This is 90.7 WVKC, the voice of Knox. And this is The Big Picture, back again with hopefully good audio quality. And I am joined by, whose face is semi-obscured by a mic. Hello. Aiden Murphy. Yes. And also Catherine is also here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
No problem whatsoever. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
I mean, my show's reputation has not been good as of late because the quality has not been swell. But hopefully the quality is swell.
Yeah, that ends today.
That ends today, hopefully, unless my mom, who has now joined, says otherwise.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, good. So I have you on to talk about, as the description says, Torvald, the musical.
Right.
I guess just to start off with, what is Torvald, the musical, all about?
Well, it's about Torvald, who is a man from a 19th century play by Henrik Ibsen. So a pre-existing character that I encountered in one of my first theater classes here at Knox. The play is called A Doll's House, and it basically tells the story of Torvald and Nora Helmer, who have a marriage that seems fine on the surface, but by the end of the play, you realize that it's not an equal marriage, and she walks out on him because he's not been able to recognize her as an equal for this whole time. There have been a lot of sequels, actually, to A Doll's House over the years because of this, not really a cliffhanger ending, but an ending that leaves it very open.
To like what happens
Yeah,
next.
because it walks out with, she leaves and the sound of the door closing is the last thing that's heard. So a lot of sequels, including one musical in the 80s called A Doll's Life, and a recent Broadway show called A Doll's House Part 2, have focused on like the adventures of Nora and what happens with her after she leaves, after she slams the door. My show is about Torvald, the husband she leaves behind, and the kids that she left in his care. He is not necessarily a model father. He tends to, in the original, leave all of that to Nora. So my play is about him overcoming these barriers to
become like
his fatherhood and become a more responsible father and a more responsible person.
That makes sense. Okay.
And also about the other characters, right?
Yeah, there's lots of characters that I've had a lot of fun adapting. Nils and Christine are two characters that are in the original play as well. Nils is the villain of A Doll's House. The apparent villain. He blackmails the protagonist, Nora, throughout the play, trying to get a job at the bank that is later goes to Nora's old friend, Christine. This kind of plot line is resolved in the original by a relationship that springs up by Nils and Christine. So she basically says, let's get back together. And he's like, I'm so happy. I'm not a villain anymore. And it's like very cheesy, I think.
It sounds like a lot like a soap opera.
Yeah, there are a lot of melodramatic elements in this play, and the time period's right for that as well. But I was able to kind of continue to explore this relationship between these two characters while Nils is the villain, or drives a lot of the plot in A Doll's House. In Torvald the musical, he's more comic relief, kind of plotting things that may or may not come to pass successfully, more or less like unsuccessfully in his attempts to get what he wants. But it constitutes a subplot in this. So the relationship between Nils and Christine is one that I didn't feel was necessarily super well explored in the original. And it was one that I wanted to do a little bit more with here. So that's my subplot. The other, I guess, subplot is Torvald's attempt to replace Nora with, and this is an interesting challenge for the actress who plays Nora, also plays Clara, the one he is courting throughout the show, basically a lookalike who has a very bubbly personality, and he assumes that she'll just be like the perfect replacement if only she'll like be able to see things, see it as he does, and realize that she'd be perfect as like his wife and a member of his household. She also plays the woman, who is kind of like an ambiguous character that could be Nora or Clara or a ghost of Nora. Yeah. But it's really not super clear what she is in the script. Yeah.
Okay. So follow a quick question. Madeline Swift is in Torvald, correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, who does she play?
Madeline Swift plays the only doctor, the only character that I haven't mentioned, which is Dr. Rank. At the end of A Doll's House, Dr. Rank makes a very kind of melodramatic speech that's like, at the next party, Nora, I will be invisible, meaning that he's going to die. He's very old and he suffers from a lot of different diseases. I kind of thought it would be funny to have him just on the cusp of death for like my entire musical. So he enters in like the third scene, sings a song about his illnesses, and there are many. And for the rest of the show, basically is like waiting to die.
Yeah.
And
Man,
yeah, I won't say whether or not he does, but
you have to see the show.
yeah,
for
you'll
that.
have to come to the show for that.
Which is Saturday and Sunday
Saturday and Sunday at 7:30.
at
May 5th and
7:30
At 7:30 in Kresge Recital Hall.
in Kresge Recital Hall.
Yeah.
Boom. I'm gonna just put a bunch of exclamation points there and then comment. There we go. So there you go. That's information to be
Yeah,
had.
that's the main thing, really.
Yeah, I want to delve into what it was like to make this musical.
Yeah.
First off, what was your inspiration besides the original?
Mm-hmm.
What made you want to make a musical?
Torvald actually sprang out of a conversation that happened in playwriting screenwriting workshop. I took that class my spring term of my sophomore year, and we were reading a playwriting textbook that was talking about the Aristotelian elements present in all classic plays. The author argues that all six, which is like plot, music, etc., are present in every play that is basically worth anything. He says, this is Jeffrey Hatcher, like I wrote about this.
Yeah.
He says that there is no music in a doll's house, so the sound of the door slamming at the end represents that kind of idea, and that's kind of a musical moment in itself. This is totally erroneous because there is a musical scene in a doll's house where Nora dances with a tambourine and her husband Torvald plays the piano, plays a tarantella. And this goes on for several minutes. So it was kind of just
Happens twice.
when we realized this, me and my friend Michelangelo, who was there, were just kind of wondering like, how could this have happened? And Mick joked, like, what does he need to realize that there's music? Does he need for it to be a musical? And then immediately saying, I'm going out the door. My life has never been so great before. And that is the opening number of the show. So it was born in that
Just a
conversation
regular-
in that class right there.
I mean, that's great, because just me personally, I think that's some of the best stuff whenever it's just like you're having a conversation and you come up with this idea. Like,
Yeah,
that
I
sounds
was
great.
just like, hold that thought. This is not a
This is
joke.
not a joke.
Like, yeah,
This is no longer a joke yet.
Yeah.
That we got to do this. So you're a senior.
right.
You'll be graduating in like 3 weeks,
Right.
ish time. You are majoring in theater, correct?
And creative writing.
In creative writing. So, of course, this musical is a big sort of practical thing you've done,
Mhm.
right? You've shown that you can do it and all of that stuff.
Sure.
I'm trying to think where I'm going with that. Like, so when this is where I'm going with that. When you graduate, what other projects, what other things are you wanting to do when you leave campus?
I don't know. I really like this musical project. I definitely want to keep working on it. And I also want to take on, I think, more musical stuff. I
Mhm.
really enjoy working on them. I don't necessarily think that my next project would be a full-length musical, given the amount of work that went into this
Yeah.
and the amount of like funding I needed to like be able to get it off the ground. Like I was part of a research program over the summer where they paid me to like work on a creative project. Without that, it wouldn't have happened. There are like a lot of facilities and a lot of resources that were available to me because this was my honors project. So I'm not keen on just jumping into like another full length.
Yeah.
But I definitely have come to realize that musicals are one of the forms of theater that I enjoy the most. And it's something that I'll always be interested in.
There you go. So when you graduate, you're wanting to focus on like musicals, you think, or
I don't really know. I wouldn't necessarily say that I wouldn't want to work on something else,
Mhm.
but I love musicals, and that's definitely something that I've learned about myself. It's like a very solid,
Yeah.
kind of abiding passion of mine.
well, there you go. As some may know, on the big picture, if that's what you're passionate about, that's what you should do,
Mhm.
right? Like you should follow your passions and what you love to do, even if you hit roadblocks every once in a while. That should be what you do. So I applaud you for doing that this term.
Thank you.
And working on that very hard. And I'm definitely planning on seeing it. Unless the unthinkable happens, I should be able to see it.
Hope you can.
That same here. So to continue down that road of you doing things after school and so, or after graduation and so on, and talking about roadblocks, what roadblocks did you run into doing this musical?
There were definitely a lot of, I think, musical roadblocks, like not, and by that I mean writing the music on this project. I've been writing scripts since I was 15, I think. So yeah, it's not too hard for me to like write a scene. There's not a lot to it because it's just really dialogue. It's like fiction without any description. And it's really something that doesn't require a whole lot of like patience compared to music.
I mean, the most is sort of required. Well, I mean, like the biggest skill involved in script writing, as far as I know, is making the dialogue real or feel real and not like a play, you know?
And it doesn't require any special knowledge to like write a conversation between two people. Whereas notating music is definitely a challenge. And I've come a long way throughout this project. I have sung in choirs for a long time, so I definitely had a foundation in like music reading, scales. I knew chords, was familiar with chord relationships, but it was a real challenge, I think, to come up with the 45 minutes of music that are in the show.
Man.
13 different songs.
They're like original songs too?
Yeah,
like
original songs, original lyrics.
Are you thinking of recording them and like, would you be allowed to sell them as like a music thing?
We are planning on recording it actually, probably the weekend after we perform. So not this weekend, but next. We hope to be able to record the songs in the same space. But I would probably just put them online as part of like my profile. That's definitely something I'm going to look into after I graduate.
Because if you do that, like you have money to continue doing projects like that.
Yeah, I don't know about selling them, but definitely like putting them out there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my mom had a question because she actually loves musicals. Wicked is her favorite, as far as I know. She asks, what style is the music? The song he's saying is very traditional Broadway tune. Is it all that way?
That is a great question. There are a lot of traditional Broadway styles in this show. It's been that way since I started fooling around with like piano when I was in high school. The songs I write just kind of sound like they belong in a musical. I always think in terms of character. I think that has a lot to do with it. But I've also made use of like various styles in this show. Like there are 2 letters that Torvald receives from Nora and Clara at the same time, kind of contrasting styles. The first one starts in like a Mixolydian mode, so it doesn't sound major or minor. And then by the time it reaches its point where she says, yes, I'd like to meet you. So that's like the beginning of their friendship. It kind of changes to a major mode. Still doesn't necessarily sound like a show tune though, because of a very strange beginning. The next one, Nora's letter, is a lot colder and it's atonal. So that was the song that took a lot of time to write for a very short song. It's only about 30 seconds, but it uses like every tone of the chromatic scale, almost like every other measure. So, and there are moments of tonality in it because I feel like those are very dramatic in a song that's mostly atonal. But I was able to make use of like that style as well. So I think I had to research on my own.
It also sounds like a letter.
Yeah, because the lyrics are very like, dear Mr. Helmer, thank you for your offer to discuss with me, etc. And then at the end, like, sincerely Clara is Clara's letter, whereas Nora's is, Torvald, I am leaving the country by boat. By the time this letter reaches you, I shall be unreachable. Look after the children for me, Nora. And that's her. Yeah, it's kind of a punch in the gut for him. So I didn't want it to be like a show tune sounding.
Jazz hand tune.
Not at all, there's music that I mentioned, the music that was in A Doll's House, which is a tarantella, kind of a folk dance that originates from Italy and was popular in Norway at the time it was written. That style influenced the last number of the first act, which is called The Party. Everyone comes over to Torvald's house, they dance, they drink, and it's dun da 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 like that. So it sounds kind of in a very different style from like the show tune, the general show tune sound that I do make use of elsewhere.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. In realm of the songs you've written, which song was your favorite, just in general, writing it and hearing it being sung? And which one gave you the most trouble?
That's a good question. Do you like Henry?
I love Henry.
That makes me feel good. Henry My Boy was one of the first songs I wrote. In terms of the songs that would be my favorite, the one that was easiest to write, I think, is You Remind Me of Someone, which is a love song between, kind of an anti-love song, really, between Torvald and Clara, because it starts out kind of flirtatious, like, you remind me of someone, and then they talk about these, like, positive characteristics, but then they reveal who each reminds the other of. And
don't spoil it.
Yeah.
No one spoil.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a healthy thing that they're so interested in each other, I'll say that.
It becomes really cringy.
Yeah, it becomes very awkward.
Okay.
I think my favorite song, the song that I find myself humming and kind of listening to when I have a spare moment every now and again, might be a second act song, a ballad sung by Christine, which is Someone to Watch Over. It's the only really slow song in the show. It's got a very pretty melody, like if I do say so myself. And during the bridge, the way Sarah Avery Lowe sings it, it just like soars, and it's got a real energy to it. So there's like a sense of dramatic tension here as well. The premise of the song is that Christine and Nils' relationship has deteriorated over the course of the first act. He tries to rekindle kind of a connection between them by reminding her how long they've known each other. So she begins to reminisce and sings about their past. But then during the bridge, she shifts to, and now here we are, the here and now, the present. Yeah. And she says, and it basically can't go on like this. I can't keep taking care of you in the way that I have for all this time. So it's like a very sentimental song, but at the same time, a very urgent one because of the nature of the relationship.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the only ballad on the show, which is maybe why I like it so much.
There you go. And then the one that gave you the most trouble.
I think Out the Door, the first song.
Really?
Yeah.
Not Nora's Letter?
It took Nora's Letter. I wrote the lyrics immediately.
Okay.
Yeah. So
music-wise,
it took a lot of research, and in terms of like the amount of research per the length, it was probably the hardest studied. But Out the Door is the longest song in the show.
That's true.
I had the chorus because Michelangelo improvised it, but I didn't have anything else. And so I ended up writing, I think, 5 different themes that were all happening at the same time, because I wanted a very big opening, something you have like Beauty and the Beast, the beginning of that movie, or like In the Heights, if you've seen that show. They have different musical themes for every character, and I was trying to like do all of that and have everyone have their own kind of moment.
Dang.
It was definitely ambitious. It was too ambitious for what I was doing and the amount of time that I had to work on it. I found that by simplifying the amount of music, putting all of the themes in the same key, which you would think would be a no-brainer, but I was going to be so creative on my first draft that it didn't really cohere. By stripping it down to like 3 themes and then background music, which would be different, that doesn't
work.
Yeah, it works a lot better, because it's not like the characters are all of a sudden singing a different song. There's just kind of different orchestrations happening in the background. So I was able to work in some of these themes in a more subtle way, but really emphasizing like the 3 ones that kind of complement each other, and especially the I'm Going Out the Door, which is the chorus and the most important one.
Speaking of orchestra, I was in band in high school. How did you get the music aspect of it? Like, you have people singing the songs, but like, where did you have like an orchestra do it? Did you do it via? I had music writing software, which is it's called Finale, and that was thanks to the Vovis Center. I was, as I mentioned, like an asset research fellow over the summer, so they gave me like a stipend to work over the summer, and I also was able to petition for like things I needed for my project. The only thing that I really needed, and it has like over this process become just clear to me how indispensable this tool is Finale. It's notation software where you can just kind of input the notes. I bought a MIDI keyboard, which is basically a little keyboard that you plug into the side and press the buttons. You press buttons on the keyboard, press buttons on your computer, and it'll like slowly notate the music. That has been just indispensable. Like, I wouldn't have been able to do this. I don't think I had enough background in music, definitely, to be able to
write music by hand. I need to be able to hear it and to change things and experiment with it, which Finale is able to do because it's like a very sophisticated program.
That's something interesting.
Yeah.
That makes me think. So with this technology that just allows you to create music, and I assume it would cost money too. Yeah, like, but you got it because of the program.
Right, it was $100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, that shows that things are becoming more accessible.
Yeah.
And that could mean that in the future, we'll just have people who have the free time to do it, just making musicals or like just, it's more open for people to do that.
Right. And from my perspective, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Like 20 years ago, I would not have been able to do this because I would have had ideas and I would know the chords I want to use, but I wouldn't have been able to write the orchestration, which I guess is where collaboration comes in. So, you know, for the vast majority of musical history, it's been written by teams. And like, I definitely see why, because there's a lot of components to it. But the great thing about, you know, the modern era is that if you have, I guess, the drive and the commitment to a project, you can do it all yourself, which is very useful sometimes.
Yeah, no, and I think that's really cool. I definitely think working together and having those teams are important. But the fact that we're kind of moving in the direction where a person as an individual can do so much just because of what's accessible to them.
Yeah. And it's just more options. It's just more options for a creator. It's not that I would never want to collaborate on someone.
Yeah.
In fact, after having written this musical by myself, I would really want to collaborate with a musician.
Yeah.
Because I think the insight that they bring is just like fantastic. And while I have a lot of ideas, I think someone who's very familiar with like music theory more than I am would have brought a lot to this project as well.
There you go. And so even with technology going, I would agree with you. I think collaboration will always be important because like, one, you want to be able to bounce ideas off of someone.
Absolutely.
And for now, technology can't do that. Maybe in some sci-fi future, the computer will just be able to bounce ideas off of you. And then I don't know what'll happen then.
Yeah,
but like,
that'll be a new era.
A new era. Maybe that'll be a good thing or a horrifying thing. One of the two. Speaking of collaboration, we're going to get into a topic which we semi-discussed out there, which is generally so musicals are sort of a mix. Do I want to talk about this now? I've brought it up. I should talk about it now. So musicals are a mix of theater and singing. So you could argue theater and choir.
Yeah.
But at least at Knox, and I'd assume other places as well, I'm unsure, the theater and the choir department don't intermingle all that much, correct?
That's true. Yeah. It has a lot to do with time commitments. Choir is 6 hours a week. Theater is at least 6 hours a week. We rehearse 15, which is close to the upper end of where you get, this is my honors project. So I definitely wanted to do the most that I possibly could on this project.
Yeah.
But yeah, time commitment is big. But there is definitely, I think, a kind of sad disconnect between these two departments because there are so many singers who like to act and actors who love to sing and the talent is really there. So many people who are in choir auditioned for this show, and even more people who do theater auditioned for me vocally, and I realized that they had great voices and didn't do choir.
Like Avery is not in choir.
Yeah, like Avery is not in choir. Like Nico's in choir.
Oh.
Yeah, Nico's in choir.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Avery's the only one who isn't, but I think it's great when you are able to bridge the gap between these two things, that because of like performing schedules, time commitments, and just really the trimester system not giving enough time to do a musical in a way that a fully teched show would want to be done. I was mentioning earlier that 3 months is standard for a musical to be on its feet, costumed, teched, sung through. But here at Knox, we would have 7 weeks between casting and performing in a week 8 slot, which is what the main stage does. That there really is a real dearth of musical theater projects here at Knox. And for that reason, the departments don't have a lot of opportunities to collaborate.
Also, we don't have time to produce them.
Yeah, and the time constraints are really the logistical reason that these departments don't work together.
Like there hasn't been isn't this like the first musical at Knox in like a really long time?
Yeah, I know they did Into the Woods sometime in the 2000s, which is like 18 years ago. Yeah.
And like that's just crazy to me because like at least in high school, it's like every year you'd have a musical.
Right, yeah.
It seemed just like a thing you do.
But I was coming up through that as well. Like I always look forward to the musicals at that time, and they were usually the most fun production I would be a part of every year.
Mm-hmm. But I think maybe part of that is like in high school, I feel like choir and theater are so intermingled in the curriculum where like if you're in choir, you're gonna do a musical.
Yeah.
And
I think musicals really help bridge the gap.
Yeah.
And there's just like, for the reasons that I've mentioned, not a lot of opportunity to do that here.
Though it's also sort of like, there's a positive to them being separate groups though, in the fact that like, I guess it's a matter of focus. It's like one person's really wanting to focus on being an actor and being in theater, and musicals may not necessarily be what they want to do.
Yeah. And when you get down to it, singing and acting are very different.
Yeah.
Like they're both crafts, they're both technique, but one is like using these little muscles in coordination with like breath to make sound come out of your mouth I don't know. There's
you being the instrument.
Yeah.
It's like essentially you are the instrument.
In both cases, you are the instrument because an actor's instrument is your body as well. And you use your voice and a certain amount of vocal training is necessary to be an actor, but it's really not, I think the music is where it gets lost.
Yeah.
Because like voice, yes, but one is focused on musicality and the other is focused on like spoken drama, and those are very different.
Would you say that even just a regular theater production has some sort of rhythm to it though?
Oh, absolutely. Like the principles that kind of infuse music are present in like a lot of the other arts.
Yeah, like movies, like anything really.
Like if you go back to like ancient Greek theater, there was a lot of music in those, and not just that, but there was like drums happening and like plucked instruments to emphasize dialogue. And yeah, there's like things you can do with punctuation when you're writing dialogue has a lot to do with rhythm. There's like parallel syntax and stuff that's like very obvious. If you can like build similar sentences, each one bigger than the next, and there are musical principles at play. Absolutely.
So like we were sort of having this discussion out there, waiting to come in here. It's sort of that whole thing of like, there's a lot of there are bridges that connect between almost everything you'll ever do. Right, because that's life, but they're still sort of separate, yet very much connected, which is really cool. Because it's like one person who jumps into theater has all this other stuff they're bringing in because of experiences they've had, than compared to someone else. So like someone goes into theater and has done choir, they're going to have skills that are different from someone who came into theater that does improv or even just something weird that you wouldn't think with theater, like engineering or. They're just going to have a different outlook and a different way of doing things.
Definitely different connections in the mind that are present there. I'll say it's been great working with people who know how to dance on this show. It's not something that I really thought would be part of this project because I envisioned it would be more of like a reading and a singing because writing dialogue and working with like vocal music are things I'm very comfortable with. I have almost no background in dance, but both Madeline and Miranda, Swift and Curtis, are able to occasionally like take some of that like physicality and help. It really adds to their performance in some scenes because, you know, there's music playing and they're on stage. And I've said in a couple of rehearsals, like, feels like you guys should be dancing now, but I don't think that we're going to be able to do that. But even just working with it in a limited way has been a really eye-opening experience. Like there's this one scene where Miranda does like a couple of dance moves during an instrumental interlude. And then Zach Metowski, who doesn't dance, tries to do the dance moves and doesn't do them very well. It's just kind of a humorous moment that just naturally resulted because of these like different aptitudes that people bring in.
Nice. There's something I'm going to bring up real quick. So those listening on the actual radio right now, I forgot to turn off the Mac, so there's also music happening. But that doesn't matter for the Facebook Live video. So you guys watching and who will be watching later, it doesn't affect you. So that's why you watch the Facebook Live video.
Yeah, that's, I guess, better.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that now it is. Now it's better. So yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting thing. Sort of the connections between choir and theater and how those connect and all of that sort of thing. So something else I'm going to bring up now is, remember when I was like, do I want to talk about this now or do I want to talk about something else? There was something else in my brain that I wanted to talk about. And I think it had to do with, that's it, the process of choosing people.
Casting.
Casting.
Yeah, absolutely.
How was that like? Were there moments where you're like, I wish there were more parts in this musical just so I could cast this person? Or
there are definitely moments in the musical where I'm like, I could use some more sound on that. There's one chord I wrote in The Party, that song that I mentioned was Tarantella inspired, where the voices cluster and there's like these dissonances that are like, basically if you were to press 3 notes on a piano and like another one a certain distance away from that, they like ring together and it sounds dissonant, but with a lot of people on it, it can sound beautiful. The actors are doing a great job with that moment, but I think it's one that would benefit from more voices, and just like the amount of talent that was there at auditions makes me wish that I could have had an ensemble, etc.
Yeah.
But that's really kind of fanciful considering our like time constraints.
Yeah.
Managing 6 actors in a 2-hour show is like plenty for, what is it? 6 weeks of rehearsal.
Well, that's interesting. So a while back, I had Joel on, which was also a very high quality show. So I think there's a pattern here. I think the shows where theater people are on, I don't know if theater is sabotaging me or not, but maybe
it's Sigma News.
Yeah, maybe it's Sigma News. With that, my question was just going to be, who's doing sound design, or how has the sound design process been?
It's been a lot of me fooling around with Finale. You can do a lot, and at the same time, you're very limited with what you can do. When the project began, I was looking for a piano accompanist, although unfortunately I wasn't able to find one who could do the performances. We ended up using these Finale files and me getting very particular with like balancing the different voices, or rather turning up the piano parts using dynamic contrasts in the script with these like little functions that you can add. You can put the little fortes and pianos in the document, and the playback will adjust to reflect the changes that you've made. You can work with crescendos, diminuendos. I've used a lot of like retards, which are slowing down. So I've gotten very particular with how these audio files sound, especially once I realized that these would be the performance files. Yeah.
The files that'll play at the performance.
Yeah. So I think that's been great. But at the same time, it's been very frustrating because Finale is not a perfect program. It's very glitchy. Like I regret to say, occasionally you'll just export an audio file trying to get the piano recording out of there, and that'll happen. But then the application will crash and the file will be destroyed. And then you have to go to backups. And I had like a heart attack when this first happened, and I didn't know about backups. But for any Finale users out there, like don't panic if and when that happens. The programmers, I think, realize that this program has a tendency to do this, and they have backups under your like documents.
Okay.
So you can usually open up Finale again, find the backup file, and it'll be the most recent draft of the song. Still very dangerous and very limiting because I think, just to make this point, I'll share an anecdote that Madeline Swift happened to Madeline Swift. She's going to sing one of the songs in the show, Rank's Lament, which is the one where Dr. Rank complains about all his diseases, for her voice recital in a couple of weeks. And Casey, the KCC rehearsal pianist, made a recording of that song, and it had never sounded better. I was like, that is electrifying when I heard a live recording of it, because there's only so much a computer file can really do. And the great thing is that they're reliable and they're good to practice with because the actors know just what to expect. But it is, I think, the live music is alive. And by that logic, these audio recordings are kind of like dead, unfortunately.
They're like reanimated.
Yeah. And so they'll do, but it's definitely not ideal for musical purposes.
Well, there you go. So We are indeed at almost the 35-minute mark. And you will need to leave a little early because you have rehearsals at 7.
Yeah, and I want to be able to set up the room as well.
So when will you want to leave?
5 minutes?
In 5 minutes?
Yes.
Woo! Okay, so I have one big question for you
Sure.
then that you will answer. Actually, 2, so we'll try to go really quick. First question, why theater? What got you into theater in the first place? So like, why are you majoring in theater, essentially? Why that?
It's been very accessible to me. It's not always possible for you to like realize your ambition of like making a movie, but like writing a play is something that you can put together with a few of your friends, and it can just happen in your backyard, basically. So it's always been there, and it's been something that I've been working on and I've had access to since I was in high school, which I'm like very grateful for and very fortunate to have had exposure to this art. I think I just kind of got sucked in, like Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote Hamilton. I saw that in the comments, and I'm a big fan, of course. He said that he fell in love with the instant gratification of theater. And I think there's like real truth to that. Yeah. Like you can do a show and you can work hard on it. And it really makes sense because you put this work in, you perform, your friends see it, people see it, strangers see it too. And then you get the feedback and you get the praise generally. I mean, hopefully. And it feels very natural to have made this thing and shown it to people and to be able to get that response in real time.
So there you go. Instant gratification. And
instant gratification, the like lo-fi, I guess, roots of theater. Like you don't need a lot. And that's something that this production is embracing. We have audio files, but other than that, we have very minimal lights. We have actors who are memorized, but not necessarily moving around the stage all the time. It is more of a kind of a recitation than like a production. And we're doing it in a place that's very good for sound because I'm very interested in like making the musical part as beautiful as I can. But there's also like not a lot of costumes, no makeup.
Yeah.
And that's all that stuff isn't necessary. I think they're just fantastic elements that always blow me away when I see a professional production because I don't have this kind of experience with them the way I do with like text and like working with actors. But when you get down to it, they're not necessary for it. And so because you can just do theater whenever you want, you can do it and fall in love with it more easily than other things.
Well, you've sold me on that idea.
So yeah.
And so I'm sure you've sold a bunch of other people on that idea as well.
Do theater.
Yeah, do theater. My last question, just to end this, and then we'll end it. This is a video, so of course other people see it. Mm-hmm. If you have one thing you want to say to either future you, looking back at this video, or the people watching, friends, family, what is it you'd want to say?
I don't necessarily know what I would want to say to future me, other than like, where are you? But I definitely know that I want to tell the people, anyone who's watching this and can, please come to Torvald the Musical, happening in Kresge this Saturday and Sunday at 7:30. It's at Knox College, Galesburg, Illinois. Drive on down if you're seeing this from afar. But yeah, it's going to be a really special production, I think.
There you go. Thank you all for watching. That'll be the show.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on, and hopefully this will be a continuous thing with good quality now. By the way, I said I would say how this quality is so good. It's because I'm not on the Knox Wi-Fi. I'm on a hotspot on my phone. That's why it works.
That's how you do it.
Goodbye, everyone. Love you all. This has been 90.7 WVKC, the voice of Knox, the big picture. See you guys next week. Yeah.